Hey guys, thank you very much for tuning in for this episode of the Outdoor Gear Review. My name is Luke, of course, and this is the After the Camp episode for the Backroads Military Surplus Overnight Adventure. Go ahead, grab yourself a cup of coffee, maybe grab yourself some water, I don't know, whatever you want, right? Kick back and relax, join me as I discuss the trip, go over the gear, and so on. Oh yeah. Now with that overnight trip, it was an absolute blast. We hopped in Moose, which is my 1986 military Cuckvy. We hit up the Pisgah National Forest on the Backroads and just went out in the middle of nowhere. How many miles did we travel on that trip? I honestly don't know. I'm not sure. I never did actually look at the counter, before we actually took off. The thing with cruising Backroads is that it takes so much time to go anywhere because you have to go so slow that it's really deceiving, right? You could be driving for hours, think that you went like 100 miles, and no, you didn't. You went like 40 miles, right? So with that trip, it was just a ton of fun. And half the fun was really just exploring. Driving around on the back roads, not really having any idea what's around the corner, not sure what you were about to meet up with. During that entire trip, I saw no cars. I saw nobody, heard no one. That doesn't mean that I didn't hear things, because I definitely did. I heard some oddities on that trip. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, it was just a fantastic trip, all in all. I cannot wait to do it again, to be honest. I hope you all enjoyed that trip as much as I did, because for me, it was thrilling, and at the same time, it was also like reliving my childhood. I used to go down into the Pisgah National Forest all the time when I was younger, and my parents hated it because that area is rough. It's just a maze of roads that just goes all over the place. It's hundreds of miles of gravel roads, and it changes all the time. One day this part is open, the next day it's closed, and vice versa. So as I was going down there with this trip, it was just like reliving old times. It was just a lot of fun to me. It was a great time to be driving Moose. Moose did an amazing job, right? It was a ton of fun to drive. The 6.2 liter diesel did awesome. I mean, it really did a great job. Super fuel efficient. The suspension on that truck is very tight, right? It's made for hauling, it's made for pulling. So those bumps, I felt every single one of them. That is a certain. I felt every single bump. We'll talk more about the truck here in just a minute, but with the Pisgah National Forest, that's over 500,000 acres of land. So, I mean, there's just so much exploring that you can do. Hundreds and hundreds of miles of gravel roads. So, yeah, I cannot wait to go back out there and do more exploring. When we were heading on this trip, we would keep coming up on these different roads that would branch off, and we would take them only to discover that the roads were closed. That happened a number of times. And then finally, I decided to take this just trail through the woods. It didn't even look like a road. And it led to paradise. That's the only way I could describe it, is absolute paradise. The location was definitely interesting because, I mean, it was obviously a road to that spot, and it had this big, gigantic rock wall, right? But it had been fractured. You could actually see drill marks on the rocks. And the trail up to the top was actually graveled a long time ago. It's just a weird place, right? But it was absolutely beautiful. It was made for me. As soon as I pulled in, I was like, whoa, we have to camp there. It's just too perfect not to. Whoa, guys, look at this. I think we have found paradise. I mean, you had the big fire pit. It was nice and level. It was absolutely perfect. The funniest element to that trip for me personally was the weather. That was a big surprise. I did not expect for it to be raining that morning when I woke up, right? I knew that it was going to rain during the night, but nobody was calling for rain in the morning. It was supposed to be a beautiful day, and it was not. As soon as I woke up, I was like, okay, I'm gonna check the weather. look at the weather. Storms are almost upon us. And I was like, oh my God, I am a fool. I should not have trusted the weather forecast because I left all my rain gear at the house. I didn't plan on it. And that meant that I was soaked. Okay, inside of the truck now, warming up a little bit. I am one wet dog. That's the truth. I was sopping wet by the end of that trip, breaking down everything in the rain, and it poured. It absolutely poured. Yeah, I was soaked. I was miserable. I was a wet dog going home. That's my bad, you know? I should have prepared better. That's how it goes sometimes, right? Yeah, my plan for that morning was to get a fire going, have breakfast, talk more, share more Bigfoot stories, because that area has a rich history of Bigfoot encounters, right? Speaking of Bigfoot, we might as well discuss that now. I don't know what was in the woods that day, but I heard something repeatedly, right? It sounded like grunts, it sounded like groans, sort of sounds, right? And I'm not the only one that heard it. As you guys know, I had a camera person with me on that trip, and that person was Susie. Susie was there, she was my camera lady, and I'm not sure if I could have done that trip without her. In the past, I have attempted to, set up the camera myself, run back to the car, get in, drive by, run back, and I quickly discovered that it's way too much work. I simply cannot do it all by myself. She deserves a clap, right? Because she really worked hard for that trip. That required her to get out of the truck, run down the road, film me driving by, right? Then go back down and hop inside of the truck. So, I mean, it was just constant, her getting out, running around. And I'm so thankful for Susie. Thank you so very much, love. I really do appreciate you. Anyways, getting off track. She was actually a little bit uncomfortable during that trip because she kept hearing something that sounded like an animal as well. Not a bear, right? Not a deer. Nothing that I personally know of. And yeah, I don't know. It was just an interesting situation. Kept hearing things. Who knows, right? Who knows what it was? Could it have been Bigfoot? You never know. You never know. There's tons and tons of sightings in that area, so it's always possible. That's another aspect which will add to the next trip in the Pisgah National Forest. Are we going to hear anything? Are we going to encounter anything? That is not my first strange encounter in that part of the country. There was an overnight trip many years ago into the Pisgah National Forest where at nighttime, as I was trying to go to sleep, I would hear this beating sound. I couldn't tell if it was like a big tree limb smacking another tree. Thump, thump, thump. I don't know what it was. That night I was surrounded by coyotes, but when that beating took place, they hightailed it out of there, right? They'd be howling. As soon as they heard that, they would stop, and you can actually hear them in the forest taking off. Very strange indeed, right? Very strange indeed. Before we talk about gear, let's talk about the meal. Let's talk about the MRE, which I ate. That was the pork rib menu, MRE. Was it good? It was okay, right? It's not the worst thing I've ever had. It's not the best. I know that Susan would not have liked that at all, right? You guys and gals who have served in the military, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's just a heavily processed meal, okay? So it's like you had the pork rib, which tasted like SpaghettiOs. You had the barbecue sauce, which tasted like SpaghettiOs. You had the cheese, which was really strange. It's so airy and light. It's just weird. The whole thing was weird. It tasted like I had taken SpaghettiOs from like Chef Boyardee and compressed that into a sandwich. That's what it was like. It was not bad by any means. The fact is, I kind of like MREs, but it's super processed, kind of gross for some people. Not everybody's going to like it. Folks, we hate to interrupt this video, but we want to take 1 second, not literally, about 20 seconds, to say that we do have a Patreon page ready to go. If you check out the description box, you will find a link to it.
Yes, you guys asked for it, so we made one. We appreciate any support from you guys, no matter how big or small.
Right.
It is greatly appreciated.
That's right. The Outdoor Gear Review is the home of the agenda-free review. We never pass on a review in an attempt to sell you a product. We have no store, no Amazon store, nothing like that. So that's it. If you guys want to pledge a donation to the channel, it is appreciated. If you can't, we understand.
Yes.
So thanks, guys. Back to the video.
Thank you.
So discussing gear, let's talk about moose. The moose is loose. So that is my 1986 military Cuckvy. That's an M1008 6.2 liter diesel. She did an amazing job. She did fantastic. You know, we went all the way down there, all the way back out with no issues at all. Didn't even have to engage the four-wheel drive. I was wondering if we were going to. And she did fantastic. The road that we went up to basically get to the point where we camped at is fairly rough, had a number of rocks on it, and whatever vehicle was up there before mine was hit a rock and busted their oil pan. There was oil, puddles of oil on rocks, on the ground. It was everywhere. So somebody jacked up their vehicle heading up there. Moose had no issues, handled it like a champ. As I mentioned before, I felt every single bump in the road though. Just like that. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, something that I wanted to talk about was space inside of that truck. You know, it's not an extended cab. You have the cab, the seat, the bed, that's it. There's no extra seating, no extra space. I was able to fit all of my gear for that trip behind the seat. I don't even know if you guys even noticed that, but everything that I brought with me on that trip was behind the seat, and it all fit. It absolutely blew my mind because I thought for sure I would have to have everything in the back of the truck, but I didn't. Moving on from the truck, let's discuss the tent, which was the Nemo ALCS, and that stands for Advanced Linking Combat System. I have been in contact with Nemo about that tent to get a little bit more information about it, and the truth is they could not tell me a whole lot because supposedly this tent is still in use with special forces around the world, so they weren't very eager to share many details. What they did tell me was that the material was made specifically for them with Gore-Tex. So it's a very specialized form of Gore-Tex, and that is why that tent is so freaking expensive. How expensive? $1,800, if you can find it. If you could find it. That's the key. It is not openly sold to the public. It is only for military channels. I was able to get that from a viewer. He said that he picked it up on eBay. And essentially, I did some graphic work for him in exchange for it because he had purchased it and discovered that it was just too big for him, right? And it's a big system. I believe it's like 7 pounds or something. And I mean, it's a hunk, right? It's a lot of material. It's heavy. It's military grade. Now, that tent blew me away when it comes to performance. It performed so well. I mean, is it worth $2,000? I'm not sure any tent is worth $2,000, but it really did perform well. The covers, which go over the top, you don't have to use those, but you definitely can, are awesome. That camo cover blended perfectly in with the background. All in all, I mean, it's just a fantastic tent. It's probably one of my favorite pieces of military kit, and you guys will see a video on that soon enough. Try not to get upset about the price, right? Some people do. I can't help that, right? With the tent there, it was super easy to set up. It was quick to break down. Just incredibly solid, right? As soon as I had it staked out, I mean, it didn't budge, and it was really windy that day. So just a huge thumbs up for me. As I mentioned before, I can't say it's worth $2,000 because I don't know if I've ever seen a tent that's worth $2,000. It could be made from material from the moon, and it still isn't worth $2,000 to me. Still, it's a very cool product, and I'm very thankful to the viewer who sent that in to me. The sleeping pad, which I used, was the Thermarest Marpad. You guys have seen that before in a review video of mine. Essentially, it's a Thermarest Pro Light Plus, but it has the Marpat camo pattern on it. It's a rare product. Thermarest does not make this anymore. But if you're interested in one, check on eBay. That's about the only place that I see them constantly. You can find them on there, still new. Moving on, let's talk about the Czech military sleep system. That was the bedroll that I slept in, and that thing is awesome. It is really awesome, especially for the price. You're looking at 20 bucks online. You can find them all over the place. It's a 3-piece system, right? You have the outer shell, which is a nylon. It's like water resistant. On the inside, you have a polyester blanket, and then you have a cotton sheet. So you can wrap up inside of that, and you're just absolutely warm, super comfortable. It's just a really cool system. It is heavy, though. It's heavy and bulky. I personally don't want to carry it very far, right? But yeah, nonetheless, it's a cool product, cool military surplus. Next up, we have the M71 Candy Stove, which is like an alcohol gel stove. They are absolutely awesome, and I recommend them to anyone. It doesn't matter if you're a bushcrafter, hiker, prepper, so on. Buy a couple, reuse them, throw them in a shelf, save them for later. They're awesome. They really are. Just really, really good products. The alcohol gel, whatever combination, however it's made, is really, really good. It burns hotter than most alcohol gels, which you can purchase today. You can replace that material with sterno. So if you run out of the gel, don't throw the can away, right? Make sure to save the can, save the stove top, right? And just put sterno in there. Sterno still works. It just doesn't burn quite as hot. Next up, talking about gear, we have the Swiss M84 Canteen and Cup. That's a really cool system. It's an aluminum cup, right? With the hard plastic canteen. It's just a great kit. You pick them up for like $8. It holds just shy of 1 liter of water. Just a great little kit. Now with the Swiss military kitchen hatchet, yes, it performed well on my trip. I didn't use it a whole lot, but I did use it some. And really, right before I walked out the door, I grabbed my Dremel tool and I went to town on that thing because that hatchet is dull as a spoon. Actually, a spoon may be sharper than that hatchet. It's incredibly dull, but I went to town on it quick and fast because I really didn't have the time to get out my tools. I had to go. But I was surprised at how good the Dremel tool actually worked for that purpose. With a steady hand, you can go all the way around that and just get it super sharp. I didn't have it sharp enough to like shave with, but it was close. It was really close. That is a fantastic hatchet. You can pick them up for almost nothing, right? Less than 20 bucks. The head is really heavy, much heavier than any hatchet you're going to find, you know, at Walmart or most hardware stores, right? It's just a really good product. The only negative is that you have to be prepared to sharpen it yourself, right? Next up, let's talk about personal protection. Now for that trip, I did have my handgun, which I don't always carry with me when I'm out on my overnight trips. That was one area that I was definitely going to take some protection with me. That area is known for being rough, tough, it's out in the middle of nowhere, so you're not going to see any sort of law enforcement. You're lucky to have cell phone reception in that area. So it's my recommendation is to carry, right? Open carry or conceal and carry if you can do so. In North Carolina, you can open carry anywhere you want to. So yeah, keep that in mind. For that trip, I had the Glock 43. It's a perfect size gun, right? It's not too big, it's not too small. 9mm, definitely has some stopping power. Yeah, this is the holster right here. This really does work well. It's very comfortable too, and this is from Sia Supply Company. Another cool thing about the Pisgah National Forest is that you can target practice just about anywhere that you want to. There are some rules about being so far away from trailheads and stuff like that, but for the most part, target practice, shoot away, be smart about it, right? At that campsite, lots and lots of target practicing has taken place. You guys didn't see it in the video, but there was a 55-gallon barrel there that had been shot all to thousands upon thousands of rounds have hit that barrel. It was shredded up. Now folks, that pretty much wraps it up for this episode of After the Camp. I think we've touched upon just about everything in regards to that trip. It was so much fun. I had a blast, and that trip didn't really cost anything. You grab your gear, you throw it in your vehicle, you go drive on the back roads, you explore, you see new things. The excitement is that you have no idea where you're going. You don't know where that next road is going to lead. You know, for me and my trip, it was absolutely quiet. It was very peaceful. I did not see one person that entire day and all that night. Not one person. That's worth a lot. Thank you guys. If you have any questions about this trip or the gear, you have to send me an email and I will address those for you. Until next time, everybody, strength and honor. Thanks for watching. Take care.